Hello? Your Health is Calling, where holistic health meets practical solutions for your well-being. With your host, speaker, New York Times bestselling author, Sue Kostyk, a seasoned holistic health practitioner and longevity coach. Join Sue each week to embark on a journey to uncover the root causes of your health concerns. Through a personalized approach, learn how to decode the messages your body is sending and craft natural protocols to address them. Call in live at 888-994-4995 Studio A.
Good morning. Welcome to Hello, Your Health is Calling. I'm Sue Kostyk. I'm an integrative health practitioner. And what I do is I get to the root cause of what is going on in your body, why you have the symptoms you have, what they may mean, and how we can get rid of the symptom and not just cover it up with a Band-Aid. So that's basically, we do that through a couple of different modalities, functional lab testing. I've got a very in-depth intake form that we go through and just really try to figure out what is going on and get rid of it forever so that you don't have to be on pharmaceuticals. So last week we talked about trauma and emotions and releasing them in different modalities of releasing emotions and trauma. And so what I thought might be a good idea is we're going to just kind of dive in today. The title of the show is Protecting Your Peace by Understanding How Stored Emotions Impact Your Health. And so because last week we talked about stored emotions and releasing them and why it's important to your overall health. And, um, you know, keeping our peace also means feeling healthy and vibrant and full of vitality. And oftentimes when we are not feeling well, we don't have that peace. So I wanted to talk about the emotions, and I can't really go into how you do this without talking about the emotions and how living in these toxic emotions really keep us down. Sometimes they keep us sick. And so we're going to go through kind of a little bit of a science lesson about emotions and what happens to our body when we sit in these emotions for too long. And I did a very in-depth deep dive into these emotions. You can find them on YouTube, the Reinvented Life Network, Hello, Your Health is Calling. All of them are titled so you can go through. I am actually coming up on almost 1 year of doing these podcasts. And so there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to kind of go back and review. So they live there. You can always go back. You can contact me at support@helloyourhealthiscalling.com with questions. So we are going to dive into this. So the toxic emotions we're going to talk about today. So the 9 toxic emotions: bitterness, resentment, discomfort, anger, disappointment, guilt, shame, anxiety, sadness. So these have been identified scientifically as toxic emotions. And what happens is these emotions are there for a reason. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you should not feel them, but they're there for a reason. And it is healthy to feel different emotions. If we weren't emotional beings and didn't feel emotions, we'd all be robotic walking around. So, you cannot experience life without mixed emotions. And each positive emotion has a negative emotion. It's like the yin and the yang. It's, you have to have a positive with a negative. It's just like our bodies. We are negatively charged or positively charged. So we need a negative charge to keep our body operating in its way. And that's why I talk about grounding. That's for another day. But the earth is negatively charged. So when we experience the mountains, when we're in the forest, when we're at the beach, we're absorbing those negative ions to balance our positive charge. So I digress. So bliss is paired with despair, joy with anger, happiness with sadness. The human experience is that. It is a balance of our emotions. And it's actually healthy. You cannot go through life without experiencing despair, anger, and sadness, and disappointment, and all of those negative, toxic emotions. But on the flip side, we can balance back to the positive emotions, to your bliss, for your joy, your happiness, feeling all the good emotions. So, when we talk about these 9 toxic emotions, and like I said, they're there for a reason, but there is something very biological that happens. And when we sit in these emotions for too long and don't recognize them for what they are and the lessons that they're bringing forward, then it's going to affect your health. And so, our emotions, when we experience anger and fright and things like that, our body physically reacts to that. And it's called fight or flight. I talk about it all the time. We start to experience a rush of adrenaline, which is caused by cortisol, which is your fight or flight hormone. We all have it. We need it. It has an intention in our body. But if we constantly sit in fight or flight and don't let go of some of those negative reactions, um, it starts to affect our health. And this is all scientifically proven. There's lots of peer-reviewed studies. PubMed is a great source of any study that you want to look at on any topic. You just put in the topic. And so when you sit in fight or flight too long over all these emotions, it's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect your digestion and your gut health. And it's going to affect your mental state and your mood, because let's take it back to the basics. Ancient man. Cortisol was used so that they could escape danger if they were being invaded, if they're being chased by a bear. Um, your body will shut down different sources. So you don't need to sleep when you're running away from something. You don't need to digest your food. You don't need to be of a good mental state. So your body understands what's going on. And when all of a sudden that cortisol is surging through your body so that you can survive, it shuts these things down. So that's kind of the science part of what I'm going to be talking about. There are some top emotions I want to talk about that we do hold on to. And they are typically anger, bitterness, resentment, guilt, and shame. And a lot of times one leads to the other. And if you can understand how your body works and your brain works, it's okay to feel these emotions. There's nothing wrong on this planet to feel any of these emotions, any of the 9 emotions for that matter. But what happens is we sit in them too long. We don't release it. So let's say you get in a argument with your spouse or partner and you are angry. You are so angry because they have said something to you that has offended you. It is not true, and you are angry. So if it's not resolved, then that turns into bitterness and then resentment. And then you start to feel guilty because you felt so terrible about this person, which leads to shame. So if you're following with me, this is kind of the flow. And instead of letting go, we sit in it and we sit in it and we sit in it. And it starts to affect us because your body, your brain's not getting the signal to shut off that cortisol. It's not getting that signal that you're resting and relaxing. And so it's going to just continue to pump that cortisol into your body. And, our emotions are so powerful. I talk about mindset all the time. They are so powerful, they literally will change the physiology of your body. Um, Sitting in these toxic emotions for too long with all that cortisol running through your body, it changes your cellular structure. It really does. And sometimes we start to feel those emotions in different parts of our body. But, again, all of this is backed by science. I'm not making this up. And there is, we are completely connected, our body, our mind, our soul, our spirit, however you want to refer to it, um, physical, mental, spiritual. It is the three pillars of our body. And so when we allow these emotions to become so powerful, our cellular structure is changed, cells start being damaged, and we feel this in our body. So many times, and maybe you have experienced this, and I'm going to use anger. Anger seems to be rampant these days, and I feel like if I'm just going to pick on anger for right now. And so what happens is anger can affect different parts of your body, your head, your heart, your back, because you're all tense. And consistent anger over time, it actually is going to cause your biological dysfunction. It disrupts the growth of your health and the health of your cells. And when all that culminates, you have an ailment. How many of you have been so angry? Your heart's racing, your head is hurting. That is cellular destruction. So, again, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I am going to give you things, but I just want to get into the meat of all this so we can understand how stored emotions are going to impact your health. So, if we're sitting in an emotion that's damaging our cells, and we sit in it for so long that we start to feel something in our body that is anger. And, if we stay in fight or flight, there's something called the cortisol steal. So I talk about cortisol all the time because it's really, stress impacts us so much, and we lead stressful lives. We, are busy. There's things happening in the world, in our country. And so it's even more so to be very, very cognizant of the stress that you're sitting in. And if it's caused by one of these toxic emotions, then we need to take a look at each and every one of them. So the cortisol steal, what happens? We sit in an emotion for too long. The cortisol is raging, and we call it the cortisol steal because it starts to steal from other hormone production. And I cannot stress this enough that I say it all the time. Our bodies will rob Peter to pay Paul till Peter has nothing left. And typically it doesn't have hormones left because your body is going to say, oh, I have to keep creating this cortisol, so I am not going to produce the things that I need to sleep. I'm not going to produce what I need to keep my mood high. I'm not going to sleep, or I'm not going to produce the things that keep my gut balanced or my hormones balanced. Cortisol, a lack of cortisol, when we start to run out of that cortisol, we start going into adrenal fatigue because your cortisol is produced in your adrenal glands. And when we get to adrenal fatigue, when we are tired and wired, you cannot sleep, that's when autoimmune issues start to creep in. And, we really, keeping our peace, even though we are in a ton of emotional upset, is going to really start with our mind. And our mind is one of the most powerful things that we have in our body. It's probably the most powerful thing. There's no pill or supplement that is stronger than your mind. Um, our mind is built around subconscious emotions, previous programming, sometimes ancestral programming. I know that sounds a little woo-woo, but there are a lot of metaphysical properties that go into our programming and the way we're raised, self-limiting thoughts that, really start with birth and moves forward. So, our mind is something that we need to start with. If you are sitting in a disease right now that just doesn't seem to be going away, doesn't seem to be healing, you need to take a look at your mind and understand the power of your mind. And are your actions actually matching up with your desires? I I did a podcast on success mindset, on mind over matter, on how we need to use our minds to stay healthy. And you can again go back to YouTube and the Reinvented Life Network and just do a search on the word. Um, because, like I said, there is no pill or supplement that's going to be stronger than your mind. And your mind, your brain, everything about your mind is set on protecting you. So if you find that you're sitting in emotions too long, it's going to get comfortable with that. And it's going to say, oh, okay, even though this isn't a good place for me, I'm comfortable. I'm going to let it stay this way. And when you start to identify, like I was having a conversation with a friend of mine last night, and she was saying, I didn't realize I was walking around so angry because you get used to it. When you start to sit in an emotion for a long time, you become comfortable. It's homey. um, so until you create an awareness about what actually is occurring, and it's mindfulness. It's really trying to understand, um, take some time to really evaluate. And if you start feeling some illnesses that are just happening, like out of the blue, like you're like, oh, I've been healthy for 25 years, and all of a sudden I am having, these symptoms and stuff. I would I would challenge you to start with your mind and start to figure out what has changed. Even 20 years ago, you know, were you in a situation that you were so angry or you were so frightened or something that you just sat in for a very long period of time so that all of a sudden your hormones aren't, balanced the way they used to be? You've got digestive issues all of a sudden because remember, you will rob Peter to pay Paul. And then when you don't have anything left or your body doesn't, then that's when these things start to sink in. So, do your actions match up with your desires? Sometimes we need therapy. Sometimes we need therapy to correct your physiology. It's not a bad thing. And finding someone that will focus on healing versus reliving, because it's not like you have to relive that, what caused that emotion to figure out the healing part of it. Reliving it sometimes creates more trauma, but focusing on the healing from it. And there's professionals out there that can do that. There is a doctor that I follow. His name is Daniel Amen, Amen, and he studies the brain. He's a psychiatrist, neurologist, and psychiatrist. And he says that you cannot heal the brain or how it functions unless you study the brain of the person you're trying to do. So he developed these SPECT scans of your brain, and it shows the practitioner what's happening during stress, what's happening during rest, how your brain functions, how it's firing, and then they can diagnose what is going on. So if you start to take a look at the part of body that ails you the most, if you have digestive problems, then that means that you're not producing serotonin, and serotonin is produced 90% in the intestines. So trauma creates an overproduction of cortisol. which means you're not going to create serotonin because remember, when you're running away from a bear, you don't need to feel good. So if you do this constantly, your intestines aren't going to produce the serotonin. So that creates, if your digestive system is not working, take a look at your gut health. If you are not sleeping well at night, that means that your cortisol is way imbalanced. So, and you possibly also have hormonal imbalance. Those two kind of go hand in hand. So take a look at your sleep. Take a look at if you have hormone imbalance. If that a lot of that is stress induced. And there is a podcast that I did on stress and stress management. And you can go back and look at that and see what some of the things you can do for that. Because I always say, we're in it, we're not going to escape it. So what can we do to manage it? And what if you have low mood? Then take a look at your hormones. Take a look at, that's controlled by DHEA and testosterone. So again, if you all of a sudden are having symptoms of hormone imbalance, which ends up in PCOS, endometriosis, and those kind of things, you need to take a look at your hormone balance. And if you've got inflammatory issues, that is a product of stress. There's so many inflammatory diseases that can be reduced and oftentimes go into remission by managing stress, looking at your diet, exercise, those kind of things. So, remember, our body is very interconnected. So you can't just say, I have this disease and not take a look at your mind, your physical, your spiritual, and make sure that everything is connected and functioning. And a lot of these things that are up here on the slide, we test for. We have functional lab tests that come straight to your home. You take it, it's either urine, spit, hair, blood spot, very easy to do. You send it to the lab and the results come to me. So if you have any questions about that, support at helloyourhealthiscalling.com. We can have a conversation and get you going because, what you want to do is really find out the root cause of what's going on. And, you can go to all the therapy and everything and start to get your emotions more managed. But if the damage has been done, you also need further help in, starting to balance all that again. So it's kind of it's a two-way street. Your mind, your physical, you got to get those two being buddies again. So there are some beneficial things that you can do. There's meditation, there's prayer, there's journaling, but there's also some botanicals. I say this over and over again. God gave us everything we need. So, if you can get a really good quality botanical, ashwagandha, passion flower, lemon balm, chamomile, rhodiola, valerian root, kava kava, maca, and CBD. Not the THC part of the CBD, but you want the cannabinoid, because we do have cannabinoid receptors in our body. So when you have just that CBD portion of the marijuana plant, then that is very beneficial in calming, very calming. A lot of these you can get as a tea. So, sometimes just having, a nice warm cup of tea is very calming and soothing, and then you're getting these botanicals. Um, you know, the I'm not saying that this is easy, because when we have emotions, they are hard to overcome sometimes. I understand that completely. And a lot of people that come to me in my practice, we do talk about the mind and we do talk about the emotions over the actual ailment, because, you know, it's difficult to become fully well without improving all aspects. We are one being, so our mind, body, and spirit, we have to pay attention to each one of those. And when we sit too much in one, either the mental, the physical, or the spiritual, then something's going to happen to the others. And especially in the mental and physical, because those are very interconnected. Your brain is connected to your gut. There's a vagus nerve that runs from your brain all the way down. And when those two aren't speaking, we have problems. So we have to improve all aspects of our life. And sometimes it just starts with awareness. And if you are becoming aware, sometimes it takes time. A lot of people will say to me, "Oh gosh, I wish I had figured this out, 10 years ago." But again, it takes awareness. It takes that time to maybe stop and try to figure out, especially if you've always been healthy, if you've always, had great physical health, and all of a sudden you're experiencing some of these things, it really may come down to figuring out where your mindset is at. And, speak truth over yourself, be kind. Don't be angry with yourself because all of a sudden you feel like your body's messing up. It's not, it's sending you a signal, it's sending you a message. I talk about how our cars have check engine lights, so do our bodies. It gives us these little messages, and we need to pay attention. Sometimes just speaking some truth over yourself or a positive mantra. I have people coming to me with several ailments, and it takes a lot of time to figure things out, to do some testing. Sometimes it takes 3 months, sometimes it takes a year, depending on what's going on. And it could get to the point where you're struggling and you're frustrated. But even just waking up in the morning and saying, every day, in every way, I'm just a little bit better. Our words matter, and that could be a whole other podcast. Maybe we'll do one about that. But words that we speak about ourselves matter. And so I hope that some of this has been helpful, or all of this has been helpful. If you have questions, support at helloyourhealthiscalling.com. We can chat, we can peel the onion, figure out what's going on. And, remember, your health is not a hobby. You have one lifeline, and it's already predetermined how long it is. But why not spend that lifeline feeling well and energized and healthy? And if it is just a matter of mindset, then that would be easy, right? So let's pay attention to what the symptoms are saying. And if your health is calling, please remember to answer it. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for tuning in to another empowering episode of Hello, Your Health is Calling with Sue Kostyk. Remember, your health journey is ongoing, and we're here to support you every step of the way. If you have any questions, insights, or stories to share, don't hesitate to reach out. You can connect with us on social media or call in live at 888-994-4995 Studio A. Together, we're transforming lives and embracing holistic well-being. Until next time, prioritize your health, and remember, your health is calling.